We're excited to have a special guest on the show here tonight for our Foul Balls podcast. Huh, Baca? We're pretty pumped up. A special guest here to join us. If our listeners aren't aware, I work with a company in Hollywood called Gritty Film Productions and a producer named by the name of Ted Collins. And we've talked before, Baca, about my movie project, Tommy Ball, with the 2000 Olympic baseball team and Tommy Lasorda, who was the manager of that team. We all know that story. We've talked about it numerous times here. And I'm really excited about that project. Ted is helping me write the screenplay and get that movie produced in Hollywood. But we've also had a great opportunity to pick up a second story, which Baca is fully aware of. And that's the story and the life story of Chris Wondolowski, right, Baca?
Yeah.
Chico State legend who came to Chico State to play Division II soccer and ended up being the all-time MLS leading goal scorer in league history. California native, Northern California Bay Area guy, but also a Native American Indian. And we found that was an awesome life story, right? This kid came out of nowhere to do this. And so we've actually acquired the rights to his life story. And Jacques Edeline here is with us here today is a Hollywood screenwriter that we've been working with to help us write that WONDO screenplay. Jacques, thanks so much for joining us, man.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me. Appreciate the invitation.
Absolutely. The reason, Jacques, I think we wanted you so involved is your knowledge of soccer. Can you tell us a little bit about your background in covering soccer and how you know this Chris Wondolowski story so well?
Sure, absolutely. My dad's a soccer coach, and so I basically grew up on a soccer field, played from the time I could walk until still playing, just turned 40. And yeah, so I after college, I played soccer in college. I was the assistant soccer coach at my school, Emory, in Atlanta, Division III school. And I was assistant coach for 2 seasons. And during that time, I was sitting in for film courses as well. So that's where I kind of learned to do screenwriting and didn't at the time want to settle into a career track of soccer coaching. And then went to graduate film school, and that's my kind of 2 worlds colliding, soccer and screenwriting. I was never like a sports journalist, but I think with the WONDO story, I've seen him play, multiple times live, both for the MLS All-Stars, the Quakes, and the U.S. national team. WONDO's actually, there were a lot of interesting coincidences as I dive deeper into Wondo's story. Like, he's 2 weeks older than me to the day. He played with a high school teammate and friend of mine for 5 years with the Dynamo and the Quakes. And just the kind of parallels of his story to mine were felt like kind of a bullseye.
When you initially got on this project, how much of his life story did you know? How much were you familiar with? Because I know when I spoke with him, we did this interview series during COVID, and I had a 30-minute interview with him, and it turned out to be like an hour and 10 minutes because he was just a captivating figure. And the story of him playing soccer and following his passion, I was just amazed because I was at the same school here. I was working in town while he was playing and taking Chico to the national championship, but I had no idea the backstory. How much of the backstory did you know?
Frankly, I didn't know too much of his personal biography. I saw the article in The Athletic saying they were developing a story about his life. And I thought to myself, like I said, I'd seen him play live, very familiar with him as a player, but knew nothing of his actual story. So my mind immediately went to what's the story here? What's the movie here? And then I found, numerous podcasts with him. And particularly there's an article also from The Athletic from when he retired called The Legend of WONDO, that when I read that article, they interviewed former teammates and former coaches telling stories about WONDO. And I was just howling with laughter, but also so fired up and inspired. Like, I have goosebumps right now just thinking about it. And I've read the article, 5 times now. So the deeper I dived into the research on WONDO, the more excited I get about the story. And And it's funny, it's inspiring. It's just he's the man. And in my interactions with him now, all good stuff as well.
Hey, Jacques, that's the thing about making movies is not easy, and we have this life story about Chris, and it takes a lot of people to really believe in the fact that this is going to make a great movie in order for it to happen. And that's really where I think your part comes into play here. You truly felt that way. You reached out to us to try to see if you could write this treatment, and we felt like you were the perfect guy to do that. So, but what about his life story do you think makes it into something that we have a legitimate chance of actually having happen? Because you know how difficult it is to get these stories sold in Hollywood and to have somebody say yes to make that script. You can write the story that you've written and you know how it should go in your head, but until somebody says yes, let's do that. What do you think is the critical factor here that's going to allow us to make this movie?
Sure, and I know this isn't a particularly film centric podcast, but to throw out a couple examples here, like it's rare, if ever, to find a true story that's as inspiring as Rudy and as funny as I, Tonya. If you're familiar with the Tonya Harding movie,
Yeah,
and those are the two tonal comps I've been using for this project,
right.
and just Wondo the character, he's everything screenwriting is character driven, and just his determination to succeed against insurmountable odds like this is stranger than fiction. Like what he was able to accomplish is mind boggling, and I would not believe it in a fiction film.
You mentioned I, Tonya, really quickly here, guys. You mentioned I, Tonya, and I read that as well. Without giving too much away, is there a particular humorous incident, because you've mentioned it now a couple times that how funny it was? Is there a particular incident you can fill us in on that really stuck out to you that maybe made you laugh?
Good question. I don't know about humor. Like, I don't know about a specific joke. Like, I'll probably like to save most of that for the page and the screen. But like kind of early in the film, as we've conceived it now, he makes his college decision. And I think he's offered a scholarship to run track at UCLA, which, is the most prestigious college athletic program on the planet, to my knowledge. World-class education, amazing facilities. And I know you're Chico State alums here, Chico residents, and, you got to love Chico, but Chico's a blast. I visited, but
It's
Chico
not UCLA.
Division II soccer versus any sport at UCLA, for someone to make that decision is shocking. And he just had a plan, and he exceeded everyone's expectations, including his own. So to answer your question, I think that was more inspiring than funny, but I think there's a fair amount of humor to be found at Chico State, as you guys, I think, can attest to firsthand.
Have you delved into the dynamic of the family and the decision that he made, and then having to impart that and tell his family? They're like, yeah, UCLA scholarship, this is going to be great. And he's like, by the way, I don't think I'm going to do that. I think I'm going to walk on at a D2 school in place and try to play soccer. I've been guaranteed nothing. I mean, I was amazed at that entire dialogue he had with his dad and his family, as they were expecting, oh, we've got a son that's going to go to UCLA and run track.
Totally. We haven't gone too deep into the family dynamic around that decision, but I even put in kind of the pitch deck we have assembled at the moment. Even knowing how kind of heroic Wondo's ending was, like record breaking from nowhere, 5 years grinding in the reserve league, the heights he reached and the record breaking career he had, I still question his college decision. Like, what were his parents thinking? Like so
that part is mind boggling.
Yeah.
It's great, but I mean, just the fierce determination. And it also speaks to the fact that these college rankings are simply rankings and numbers, and Wondo found the right school and the right path for himself. Right. So I think there's inspiration to be drawn from that as well.
I'm interested in your take as well on the one, arguably one of the biggest moments of Wando's life when he played for Team USA in the World Cup, and a moment that comes back to in a lot of media that people talk about Wondo. A lot of people say, had a shot to win a game, missed an open shot in front of the net that could have given the USA a win over in a huge match. In my opinion, for the purposes of this movie and this story, I hate to say it, but I feel like it's better that he missed that shot. I think it's kind of, I don't know, if he kicks a game-winning goal in a World Cup game, it's almost like
fairy tale.
That's too fairy tale. Like this kid's career is just going up, and up, and he gets to the mountaintop and then has the biggest miss of his life. Mm-hmm. But he got to the mountaintop, right?
Totally. I'm firmly of the opinion that team game, 11 players, gutting it out for 90 minutes, sometimes longer, and to place individual blame or individual praise on one player, one moment, doesn't truly belong in a team sport. I think the shot was like, if you watch the couple minutes leading up to that shot, Wondo wins the header against one of the best defenders in the world, Vertonghen, right? He's making runs, making things happen. He's making runs to create opportunities for himself. And the actual shot, Courtois, one of the best keepers in the world at the time, if not the best, is closing him down. It's not a cut and dry chance. And to hear Wondo tell it after in interviews, he just needed to get it on goal. That's all that could have been asked of him in the time. Like, it wasn't a tap in golf that he missed. So that's a big part of the reason I'm excited to tell this story, is to show who this guy actually was, because a lot of casual sports fans or casual soccer fans remember him for that, and that's, I don't know, in my mind.
Yeah. How do you plan on how do we plan on treating that moment though in this story? Is it part of this? It's part of the story, but how do you feel like that should be treated then at the what do you want to do with that scenario?
Yeah, I think it's a great learning opportunity and a character building moment for any professional athlete, any person really.
Kind of portray how he handled the moment, right? How he handled it professionally as when it happened, right? And that's really the most important thing, how he handled that whole entire scenario of that day.
Right. And it's by no means like the focus of the movie. No. And as you were saying, kind of the true story, the true narrative fits into a film so perfectly. Like it is, the end of Act 2. Like it's almost the perfect structural screenwriting moment, kind of the dark night of the soul where you come back stronger.
And it's interesting because after that miss, he answered it with aplomb. He basically was like, yeah, I had an opportunity. It just, didn't go. That's soccer. That's how the game goes. And then he picked right up with his professional career, and it's like he didn't miss a beat. And that whole narrative and him battling and battling and battling. And then he has that moment, and then he just keeps battling and battling and battling. That was his MO for his entire career. It was from Chico all the way to the Quakes, all the way to the record setter.
Totally. Yep. Just, excited to be involved in it, and stay tuned. Hope this thing has been a blast, and it's been developing pretty quickly. So hopefully that momentum can sustain.
Right.
Other projects in this game have a tendency to stall out sometimes, but this one has just had a lot of energy. I think probably inspired by Wondo.